Welcome to the Freedom Blueprint Show, a podcast about creating the lifestyle you want through your small business. Drawing on their experiences starting and running multi-million-dollar small businesses, three friends, John, Ryan, and Gabe, discuss how to have a business, but more importantly, a lifestyle you love.
All right. Hello, everybody. We are at a new episode. What did we learn from 2020? It was a crazy freaking year for all of us in so many ways. Amazing opportunity, as hardships often are, for growth and introspection. You know, other people maybe not so much. Maybe things felt like they were kind of falling apart. But yeah, how did you guys feel about this insane year? And what are your takeaways, if any? And what are we doing differently because of it?
It's funny. I remember before we started recording, I was like, I don't know if I have much to add. And then even as you're talking, I was like, oh man, I have a lot of stuff to add now. It's kind of funny how that works, isn't it?
It is.
This year for me, it's just been a year of a lot of change, a lot of changes that I've had to adapt to and kind of learn to ebb and flow with. So it's definitely been interesting for sure.
I know the next time the pandemic comes around, I'm just going to buy every single house that nobody wants to when everybody pulls out.
For sure.
Right. I mean, who would have? So imagine this, right? So imagine you're in March, right, of 2020. The NBA just cancels its season, right? I think that was the oh shit moment for kind of the whole world. You know, I was at Collective Genius, a networking group, all these real estate guys. We were in San Diego. We didn't think it was going to be a big deal. We thought it was just whatever, you know, like SARS and those other ones that didn't manifest. And then, oh, fuck, the NBA canceled their season. Holy crap. What is good? And then talk about flight restrictions and stuff. We're like, wow, this is freaking real, man. But imagine then hearing, and then you have to guess that day, what is the Dow going to be at the end of 2020? You know, it's going to be higher than it was, you know, at the freaking beginning of 2020, right? What are real estate prices and values going to be at the end? Higher. What the heck?
From what I understand is the guys that struggled most were the guys that have these $50,000, $100,000 a month budgets for marketing. How do you just turn that machine off?
I did actually. Yeah. And I actually did have to do that. So literally at that meeting, I'm like, shit, man, cancel TV, stop our direct mail entirely. We pretty much shut everything off. We just kept our employee salaries going, which was still a big nut for us, 50, 60 grand. But we shut all the marketing off, just work our leads. And because you just didn't know. And I pulled all my credit lines too. So all 500 grand that I had on free and clear rentals, pulled that and put it in the bank just as a reserve account. Yeah. So that was my immediate action steps on it. But yeah, it was wild.
Yeah, it was scary for us too, man. I mean, we had to downsize. I mean, I lost half of my sales pipeline, just completely evaporated, set to close in the next couple of weeks. And then the lenders are not funding. Buyers are saying, keep my deposits. I don't care. I'm not closing.
Crazy.
Everything just stopped. And it was interesting though, because we ended up selling some of those deals. And a part of me was like, dude, should we just close on these things? Because we had to give these buyers massive reductions. And they bought amazing deals. It was great for them. And I'm just like, man, we're leaving so much money on the table. But Omar was like, no, we're not closing. This is no way. That's out of the question. Because you don't know what's going to happen. It's just scary, you know?
He's more conservative than you are. That's scary.
Oh yeah, he's way more conservative than I am. But I'm too aggressive to a fault. So he's my good yang, you know.
Yeah. You guys do conservativeness to you too, though, Gabe. You know, what my biggest takeaway is. I never want to be in the position again that I was in. I own I can't remember. I think it was 7 houses. And I had purchased the values of them. I was flipping them between $600,000 and $1.4 million. I mean, those numbers add up pretty fast, right? It's a lot of capital. And I spent every day for at least 2 weeks figuring out how not to lose money. And that sucked. I hated that. I felt like it was 2008.
Yeah. And were you successful in that? Were you able to get out of them? And
well, I sold 2 of them. I probably lost a couple $100,000 just dumping 2 of them to get rid of them. One buyer took advantage. He, at the closing table, he said, give me a $60,000 reduction or I'm walking.
Wow.
That was freaking A. So, we agreed on a $30,000 reduction and just got it done because I wanted the cash. I was all about having as much cash as I could, even if it was at a discount. And I committed to myself to Look, I don't know when the recession's coming, but there's some type of real estate recession coming in the next 1 to 5 years. Like, it has to happen. The values are just too high, and they've been too high for too long. And I just don't want to be in that position again where I'm fully levered with all this hard money and all these properties.
Yep.
And to be honest with you, at the end of the day, I remember having this conversation with you guys. I could have sold them and not lost any equity, but it still was like the end of the world that I was going to make this much money and it was all going to just disappear.
Yeah, you didn't know. But it's interesting. It's interesting too, because if you're like a contrarian, right, and you see the world going to shit, Howard Marks always talks about it. Like, when everyone's, to have a skeptical state of frame of mind as an investor, right? So when everyone's optimistic and there's a lot of optimism, you're skeptical about the optimism, and you're kind of like saying, why is everyone overpaying, and why is everyone so excited about this? But then the opposite is true. When everyone thinks the world is going to shit, you're kind of asking, like, is it really going to shit? Like, is this the time that we should actually be buying and like actually getting great deals on? And it sounds great in theory, but like when you're going through it and those emotions are there and the fear is like there, like, and it's really happening, it is hard as shit to like have that frame of mind,
Very much. Yeah.
It was 2012. Okay. So we're out of the recession. Do you guys agree for the most part?
Oh yeah.
But even 2012, I don't think everyone knew exactly where the bottom was and when we were going to go back up is a good way of saying it.
Yeah.
Is that fair? And
I was in South Florida.
What's that?
Not in South Florida.
I was bidding on a 350 home package from FHA, and we were putting like 3 to 5% increases in prices over the next, 3 or 4 years as we got through the package. Well, guess what happened in 2013 in Phoenix? Prices went up like 35%. Like, if I would have bought that freaking thing, like, oh my gosh, like it would have been like the best deal in the world. But I was so conservative at the time because we had just gotten out of this recession and everyone was still afraid. Like, all my lenders, investors, everybody was still afraid. And it was hard to make those decisions. And the guys that made it were the smart ones like you, John, that had that perspective of, I'm going to buy every single house that exists because these are below replacement costs. Like,
right.
I'm going to go out and buy everything I can. And I hope I can be in a position cash wise to be ready for something like that again.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of my takeaways for 2020 was, Gabe, the same one that you just said about how emotionally challenging it is. I remember that when the Dow was at 18,000, which ended up being its low point, people talking about it going to 16 or 15,000. And I bought in my IRA all the way down, but I was too aggressive early and I wasn't aggressive enough late. So I'd always thought it was going to be easier to execute on this, especially as you just buy on the way down, not a big deal. You just dollar cost average down. And I more or less did it. But then when it was at its lowest was when I started to buy less as opposed to buying more right as it was at its lowest. So just the difficulty, intellectually, we understand this idea about the contrarian thing and you want to buy when there's panic and fear. But one of my takeaways is just how difficult that is, and just living through that, having that experience was a big takeaway for me.
Yeah, the fear feels real, like the emotional intelligence. And Buffett talks about it all the time. He's like, you don't need a very high IQ to be an investor. It's all about the EQ. And it's like that. Like what Ryan just said. Like, everyone thinks everything's bad right now, but hey, the hedge funds did it. They're like, we're gonna buy everything because we're buying below replacement costs. It doesn't, like, that's stupid. Why not? Let's just buy everything, and they are filthy rich. Yeah,
what a smart thing they did. One of my other, I'll say just, personal like takeaway too was just like, I enjoyed the first few months of it, the lockdown. Like, I'm an introvert anyways, but I enjoyed it. It was like so much less distraction. Like, I didn't have to worry about like even just like friend hangouts or going out and meeting people or whatever. Like, I just didn't have to worry about doing any of that stuff because you couldn't. So all you could do was just be at home. And so I just like doubled down on work and on the commercial real estate stuff I was trying to to build. And that was really transformational for my commercial and self-storage, business that I have now and the properties that I own now.
Nice.
That accelerated it a lot. by those 3 months, and I enjoyed that time. Then it got old. 3-4 months it got old, and I was like, oh, I want to like do things again. But yeah, that was kind of my experience of it.
Yeah. I mean, the same, it didn't really change my lifestyle as much. For me, the most difficult part was going through the shedding of a lot of stuff, unnecessary things that we had in business, and having to simplify. But that simplicity that we brought to our business, because of what happened with COVID and all that, was great. Like we just closed out probably, I don't know if it's been our best quarter that we've ever had, but it's been one of our best quarters that we've had this past Q4. And things are, I don't want to be too optimistic, but they look bright right now for us, but we had to change, between that separation with the wife as well. There's been a lot of changes for me that I've had to adapt to, and I'm still adapting to, but I'm enjoying the ride, man. I can't complain.
Yeah, I'm not referring to your separation here, but I think a lot of us kind of felt bloated, and we got caught a little bit with our pants down when the pandemic hit. And I think a good lesson for 2021 is just, especially when the market's really high and you never know when a recession's coming, is to be conservative and be nimble. Yeah. Like don't have a bloated team. Don't keep salaries that you don't need, and just shed, get your process and systems and automate. Like automation is so freaking important, right? And just be able to be flexible and nimble when stuff changes.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things, like there's no risk. Risk is a funny thing because the people who are doing well with mitigating risk, they're not getting rewards for it, right? Like it's the people who are not mitigating for risk that look like they're killing it and crushing it because they're way more offensive driven. And if the market's going well, it looks like it's going really, really well for them. But then when something like this happens, like COVID, and things turn, then you really see, like you say, who's swimming with their pants off. And then it becomes apparent like, oh, okay, well, I was actually doing something right. But it takes those times for you to finally realize what you've been doing pays off, but you don't see it any other time.
Well, yeah. And the reality is people that rely on other people's opinions, it's a big deal because, they want to look good on Facebook and they want to be an influencer and they want to take those risks just to be able to get in that spotlight.
For sure.
And, guys like me that don't really care, like, I don't know, but I probably have a higher net worth than a lot of the influencers out there pitching real estate stuff, and maybe not. And I don't really care, but, I don't, at times, there's times in my life where I want to have that influence and I want to, be out there, but I'm just not willing to, what it comes down to, I'm not willing to risk as what it takes to get that life. Does that make sense? Yeah. Start doing 100 deals a year again and start, trying to strive after this, because it's risky. It's just too risky for me.
Yeah.
I mean, right, a once in 100 year pandemic. I mean, the interesting thing is the pandemic came when we were due for a downturn, right? When we were overdue for a downturn, Ryan, like what you said, right? I mean, a lot of people were thinking, really, I pretty much heard next year there's going to be a downturn. I've heard it from like pretty serious, thoughtful people, or there could be a downturn from really 2016 on every freaking year, and just a little bit louder every year. Mm-hmm. And so a once in 100 year event, but overdue, and part of why I switched from almost all rehabbing over the course of 2 or 3 years to 100% wholesaling, which I fortunately was in that situation when this happened. So yeah, I was nervous about my business and keeping my employees and trying to keep them employed and stuff, but I didn't have to be worried about my own money, because I had sold almost everything and I, had most of that money sitting aside. So I guess all that being said, to pay attention to where you are in the market cycle, because even if it didn't end up being a huge downturn, but if you were really cognizant of it, you would have been cautious at that time anyways, because we were in a multi-year peak at that time. Right. And it was clear something was going to happen. It just happened to be something nobody saw coming.
Have you guys heard of the pride cycle? Mm. So there's this evolution in history going back thousands of years of pride and humility. Let me get my circle. There you go. See it?
Yeah, like optimism and pessimism, basically, in a sense.
And what happens is when a society gets prideful, they start to get greedy and arrogant and start to take much risk, and then they get humbled. And,
the cycle.
It's a cycle that is existed with all. And if you look at all these downturns throughout all the ages, it's this pride cycle. And I've always said, I don't think the next downturn is going to happen until we forget about the last one. Mm-hmm. And I don't even mean like remembering. I mean, remember the emotions and the feelings of it.
Yeah. Because when you're humbled, you don't take unnecessary risks. You act cautiously.
This pandemic might accelerate it in the sense of it gave us a little bit of a scare. And then all of a sudden, wait a second, everything is going to be okay. Yeah, let's go hard. And I think a lot of people are going to have this little blip of the pandemic that it came back so fast, the real estate did. And they're going to get comfortable. And over the next year to 5 years, get more and more comfortable. And it's when we get comfortable and we forget about those lessons that we should have, those things that we do to right. Risk as a society. I don't even mean me and you, but as a society, right? And the groups.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, when everyone's humbled, that's when you can get the best deals, right? When everyone's optimistic or, what was it? Oh, prideful. Yeah. They think they're getting great deals and everyone's overpaying for stuff because they're just thinking everything's going to keep going up.
Yeah. I mean, another thing I'm doing differently is I'm having more cash aside. I'm going to have probably like 15 to 20% of my net worth in cash, basically at all times until there is a downturn. And like Ryan's saying, it could be 1 year or it could be 5 years. So it could be a long ass freaking time. The market can stay irrational for a lot longer than you can stay solvent. This irrationality can go on for like a long ass time.
For sure.
But that's another takeaway for me is having that 15, 20% cushion set aside at all times, just for my own personal and business, like well-being and state of mind. And then also for whenever there are opportunities, which there will be at some point, and to be willing to be patient with waiting for the opportunities. So that was another one for me, I think.
I am a little bullish though right now. At least just for now. I mean, I don't know how things will progress, but just like in South Florida, I mean, it's crazy, man. Like supply is at an all-time low.
Yeah.
Sales are almost like 1.5 times what they were last year going on. And then because of the pandemic, because people are working from home, so many more people than ever in the past are migrating to South Florida. So you have an influx of a whole bunch of people coming to South Florida because they want to live in sunny South Florida. So like all the leading indicators in South Florida look extremely, extremely positive today. And that I think this year is going to be probably, I don't know how long this craziness will last, but at least this year, I think it's going to be like one of the best years we've probably ever had.
Yeah. And to your point, I agree with those leading indicators. You got to watch those in your market. I've always felt like the real estate crashes that we've had in our history have to do with the lending industry. So if you're paying attention to the lending industry, that's super important of how liberal or conservative they are. It was the savings and loan crisis. You guys remember that, right? Mm-hmm. That was a big one that happened back in the 80s. And then, this last one was all the credit swaps and all that crap that happened. So I pay attention to that. So I think when there's going to be a downturn, it's going to be something else that happens, whether it's a stock market crash or something. And a lot of it from a real estate perspective is going to be market specific, right?
Yeah.
A lot more market specific. So pay attention to that. I guess if you're listening to this, I'm like John, I'm trying to accumulate cash. That's why I bought these real estate photography companies. Is they're cash cows, right? They just generate cash that doesn't need to be reinvested, as much cash reinvested. So the more cash I could generate, I feel like the better position I'm going to be in when there's a downturn. And let me give you guys this perspective. My brother-in-law, now he partnered with somebody, but let me just take his idea and his business versus mine. I went out and started buying $30,000, $40,000 houses and building that rental portfolio over 10 years. They bought self-storage companies when nobody was buying them in the crash. I mean, they were just buying them up like crazy. And they were 50, 60%, 70% occupancy, just buying these things up nationwide. They sold their business. I don't remember the number. I think it was like 150 million or some crazy number after 10 years. My business wasn't worth that much after 10 years and all my rentals. I built a good net. And honestly, like we both started with the same amount of money and they just went after bigger deals and I went after the smaller deals during the crash.
Yeah.
So
wow.
That's the big lesson takeaway I took is I'm hoping I spent 12 years. I've gained my 11, 12 years. I've gained my knowledge. I need to keep the cash so that the next time this happens, I can take my knowledge and do what John's doing and go after bigger deals with the cash.
I love it.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think this was a pretty good episode. Yeah. Interesting topic.
I agree.
Good idea, me, for thinking of this topic. All right. Thanks everybody for joining us. We'll see you all in the next one.
All right, guys. Later.
All right. Thanks.